Let's get to our little interview here.
Sure.
I've got the recorder on.
Yep.
Um, and do you recall your first performance at the Old Vienna?
I I have got to guess that it was an open mic. Um,
Hmm.
I landed in Boston in the autumn of '92. I was living with three other people in a flat in Somerville in Davis Square back when it was the Paris of the '90s.
Yeah.
And and I within a week or two, I had hit all the coffee house open mics, the Naked City Coffee House, the Nameless Coffee House, had gone to Toad, yada, yada, yada.
Hmm.
And through them, I met, again, this is how it worked back then. You'd hear from the people, oh yeah, we're driving out to a place called Westboro, to a place called the Old Vienna Coffee House. I remember going to the open mic and driving with Deb Pasternak. I
Oh,
remember
yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, but I don't have a specific
Hmm.
memory of the specific first gig. But oh God, I can tell you two very solid memories there. Um, One is my old friends, the band Groovosaurus. They played an acoustic show there, and they were doing the old song "I Only Have Eyes for You,"
Uh-huh.
uh, which was written by an old Tin Pan Alley guy, Henry Warren.
Hmm.
We all know it as sort of, we know that version that was later, like '60s, kind of a doo-woppy version.
Right. The Penguins or something, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
believe it was the Penguins.
yeah.
But actually, it's from way back in the way back when the guy that
Ah.
wrote "Come On Along and Listen to the."
Oh,
Uh,
oh, really? A Tin Pan Alley tune. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but Groovosaurus were playing an acoustic set, and I remember Goody was conducting the audience to do the doo-bop shabop
Yeah,
from
yeah,
the.
sure.
So that's an indelible
Hmm. Yeah.
coffee house moment. And then the big one is that I was working as a day job at the Music Emporium it was at that time in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Hmm.
And a guy named Chris Smither used to come into the shop, and I got to know him and really like him. And then I secured myself a spot opening a show for Chris Smither at the Old Vienna Coffee House, which that's an ordinary tale. But the two things that were not ordinary about it were, well, several things were significant, at least for me. One is, uh, I remember I played my set. I don't know how it went, but then I remember standing with Chris, and I remember he was being introduced, and they said, "And now our main act." And he did this truly delightful thing. He turned to me and he just went,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
and he pooched out his lip there, and essentially he was self-deprecating the whole idea of fame. Like the
Mm.
way Chris comes across, I knew what he was saying, which is don't take any of this too seriously.
Right, right,
The
right.
only important thing is that you're alive and you are now going to go on stage and try to connect with people in their fleeting moments on
Yeah,
this earth.
that is the thing, isn't it? Yeah, yeah,
Right. So
um,
that was like such a mentor moment.
yeah.
And the second thing I remember is that I was awfully chatty with his manager, Carol Young, uh, who is also his partner, and we wound up working together for, good God, for 12 years. She was my manager as well, and she's still a dear friend and another of my mentors, although no one much knows who she is because she keeps a lower profile. So that was the second huge thing about that night. And then the
Yeah.
third huge thing about that night was at the end of the night, Chris did something which, he's a retiring guy. I wouldn't say
Hmm.
that he is shy, but he very much keeps to himself, even as a public person. But we were standing there saying good night at the end of the night, and he looked me square in the eyes and he said, "Hey, I just wanted you to know that I liked what you did, and also that I like you. I hope good things happen for you."
Yeah.
And it was so, yeah,
Yeah.
it was so gracious and direct and bracing, and within months of that, I was, managed by Carol, and I was in cars going to open shows for Chris in Vermont and New England, and then California, Ireland, France, England, and honestly, that was the night the connection was made, was at the Old Vienna
That was the night.
So,
that was the night when you opened for Chris. Yeah.
I owe, in some ways, I owe my entire career to Chris and Carol and the folk scene that directed me to the Old Vienna, and the Old Vienna for being that place,
Did you hear that, Tim? You hear that, Robert?
You hear that, Robert, Tim? Here's another one. I could just go on. I opened for Bill Morrissey.
Oh, yeah.
Bill Morrissey. And there was an ice storm.
Yeah,
and at 4:00, the roads were so bad that I'm like white knuckling it to the Old Vienna. And I scoot into I slide into a parking space, and then I gingerly carry my stuff across the icy parking lot. And, get up in there, and Bill is already there, and he's sound checking, and then I sound check. And he looked out the window with this sense of sort of drunk bemusement. He goes, well, we're going to get murdered tonight. Which would be a damn shame if our careers were 1 week long. And again, that has stayed with me forever. Our careers, a superstar is made in their big break, and then they were on this MTV thing, and it all unfolded from there, et cetera.
Right.
That is only one way to do it.
Only one way, yeah.
The other way to do it is to take your 4,000 at-bats and make what you're going to make them.
I saw that happen so many times in that folk scene, in these little coffee houses. Somebody like Don White or Diana Kirk or somebody would be playing to like 5 people. And 2 of those people would come up and say, love that. And how can we hear more? And you'll always connect with people, never give up. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And also, word of mouth remains in 2024.
Yeah.
The thing. I'm listening to a podcast right now. See, 2024. It's the history of rock and roll in 500 songs.
I listen to that religiously.
Isn't it great?
Yeah. Andrew Hickey.
Here I am streaming a thing that an Englishman in his studio is making, that's going out into the ether and coming through all the feeds and etc. And yet he always says, if you like this, of course you should give it a good review. Of course you should subscribe to it. But honestly, tell at least one other person.
Yeah.
Word of mouth.
In his Scottish accent, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell at least one other person.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a part of me that thinks that's the shopkeeping that we should all be doing, right? Because I still function that way.
Yeah.
I check somebody out the 4th time somebody tells me, you should really check this out.
Yeah. It's funny. Now it's like, what are you watching?
Right.
On TV. It's the only way to find so much out there. So,
God.
Go ahead. The pre-digital world. That's what you were talking about.
Well, yeah. Smither told me he used to play. You'd go to DC, and you'd play the cellar door, and you'd play Wednesday and Thursday, and at 7 o'clock and at 10 o'clock on Friday.
Right.
7 o'clock and at 10 o'clock on Saturday.
Right.
An afternoon matinee on Sunday.
Right. You just kind of check into the place for a week.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He told me this, and my eyes lit up, and I said, what happened to that? And he said, the VCR. And that's analog technology, but he's not wrong.
Not wrong. Yeah.
You used to just tape your Wednesday night show if you really liked it, and you just watch it on Friday night instead of going to see Chris Smither. And now we have the VCR on steroids. We have.
It just changed everything. Yeah. The 90s. What was in the water? What was in the air? I came up to Boston not knowing anything about the singer-songwriter culture up there. I mean, obviously, things were coming together in a very kind of good, perfect storm kind of way. You know, the Massachusetts Miracle, the companies forming headquarters all up and down 495, and people moving out there to the suburbs. I mean, I have these stories I heard. I'll tell you my story. Jack Hardy, the first folk concert I went to, Jack Hardy and Barbara Kessler, and Kessler was opening for Jack Hardy, and so Barbara Kessler was like, "Wow," you know, and Jack Hardy was like this, the old pro, you know, like, "Oh wow, this I've never heard anything like this in a long time," because I come from the village and New York and all that. But I get this, right? So he's like, he says, "I think I'm going to sing Farewell Angelina. I don't think anybody's heard this whole song for a long time. It's one of my favorite songs." And everybody's like, "Oh, okay, great." You know, this is like 15, 20 people on folding chairs in a church basement, right?
Yeah.
So he goes through the first two or three choruses, right? Farewell, Angelina. The sky is up, and I must go. And then he's strumming and he's picking. And he's like, can't remember the next line of the next chorus, right? So from behind me, I hear somebody say, "The Machine Guns." Somebody in the audience remembers the first line of the fourth chorus of Farewell Angelina and is prompting the singer, you know, in this coffee house. So I'm like, this is really something. You know?
Yeah.
And by the time I got to the Old Vienna, I said, wow, I am home.
Yeah. The 90s scene in Boston, I mean, in some ways, I encountered the 90s scene in Boston with the myopia of any idiot in his early 20s. You know, I moved to a large city and the scene there was great. So I presumed that there must be a similar scene in New York. And yet I don't think there was anything extraordinary, even in New York, even in Philly. I mean, they each do sort of have their own little clubs and their own little scenes. But there was something very strong about the Boston scene. What I noticed was I was in the sort of coffee house scene, but then I was hanging out with that band Groovosaurus, and they were in every scene, you know, like everybody played in every other band that they could think of.
Interesting, yeah.
Multi-instrumentalists, and, you know, the Berklee School of Music is no small thing. You know, it's what you have there is a bunch of great players in a bunch of genres collected, and then you had a very healthy live scene, and
the Berklee factor.
Absolutely, right. But and then of course there's the whole, you know, that's where things were happening. That's where people got sent in the '60s. You know, Smither coming from New Orleans was told you gotta go see, you know, you gotta see Eric von Schmidt. You gotta see, you know, that's where, like, you think about a place like Club Passim, which is sort of one of the larger heavenly bodies that allowed the smaller heavenly bodies like the Old Vienna to all have a healthy sort of solar system of venues, right? Yeah. And then, you know, like Smither, God, the list of people that opened for Smither, you know, like Tom Waits and Joni Mitchell and
Bonnie Raitt probably at some point, you know.
Absolutely, right?
Yeah.
Right. And also Massachusetts is a distinctly, for good, a little bit for ill, but mostly for good, I think Massachusetts is a distinctly foundational part of Americana in the following sense. Like, I remember going to do a radio interview at MIT, and, you know, taking the back streets there on my bicycle and happening upon Galileo Galilei Way. And beginning to understand that the Enlightenment itself is only like about a 500-year project, and America is about a 300-year project. So the Enlightenment was still actually gathering steam when people started to settle Massachusetts. And as a result, you have all of these. I think it made for very fertile soil, because you have all of these mechanisms of the Enlightenment. Like, are women people? Well, then I suppose perhaps they have rights. You know, are
Yeah.
people of different races,
Yeah. Yeah.
still people? Well, then
Yeah.
I suppose that they have rights, and it takes hundreds of years. I mean, it still hasn't
Yeah.
really happened, but you know, if you look at all this, you know, the Underground Railroad and the early abolitionists and the transcendentalists and all that, I really think that it specifically bears on the Old Vienna Kaffeehaus, in that you just had a fertile intellectual, cultural buildup of silt. Hi, this is Peter Mulvey, and I've been reminiscing with Chris Yeager about the Old Vienna Kaffeehaus, and I hope you'll be there. We're having a reunion August 17th in Hopkinton, Mass. Just click the link right there. Just click it, and then go on August 17th. See you there.
Trouble with poets is they talk too much. They tell us it hurts them a little more, and we cannot tell if they make this up. We've never stood in their shoes, in their skins, in their heads, on their shores.